Bulletin. FauxTech Podcast now underway.
Episode 4.
This is episode 4, and episode 4 today is about blogging.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you do those random... Did you think he was going to say something?
No, it's called hustle, trying to do too many things at once.
Hustle reactions.
Classic. Hustle action. Let's talk about blogging. Let's just define it today, and let's talk about why somebody might want to do it. Maybe for themselves or for business or for, some kind of monetary value, and how to do it and what you should use. What do you think?
That's probably an interesting topic. I mean, a lot of people have been blogging for a long time, but there's probably a lot of people listening in that, wonder about it.
The idea being, why would somebody do it? How could you do it? We don't have to go into the history. Everybody knows what it is by now, I think.
Mm-hmm. Web logging.
Mm-hmm. Whatever do you mean, Anthony?
It's like you make a log on the web and you take the B. Oh, this is going badly. You take the B and you put it on the log and you call it a blog.
Oh, I get it now.
I'm picturing like a real bee in a log.
I'm thinking like I need to do like the Sesame Street. It's like web, log, web, and then the WE kind of go.
Totally.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the average person who blogs is just putting their thoughts up, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
It was more like a online journaling initially before it became sort of
Kind of
latched
like
on as marketing.
Captain's log.
Whoa.
Like a clog.
Captain's
Like
log is a clog.
Yeah.
A clog.
Okay, so I think a significant portion of the internet is blogs.
Absolutely.
A significant portion of the internet.
These days, for sure.
Right.
And because it's so easy to set one up and all of that, it's actually almost become the default website for so many people.
So what is a blog? For those that do know, you already know, but for those that don't, it's your own website that you can publish whatever you want to, pictures, text, video, audio, whatever, and you can make it available on the internet with your own, www.whateveryournameiS.com if you can get that saved at whatever web registry you want, domain registry. So let's talk about people who might want to do it for their own reasons. Why do you think people would do it for themselves, not for business? What do you think?
Themselves? I can tell you why I would like people to do it for themselves. You
would actively like people to blog.
I would actively like people to blog, and I would like actively people to blog because everybody has interesting hobbies and interests. And what I read on the internet most of the time is people who are into marketing. 99% of that's what I read is blogs. I find it very boring. I find a lot of the information regurgitated. I find a lot of it self-serving. So to find somebody who loves knitting Afghans and has things to say about that, I would find that interesting myself.
You're talking about people who love people from Afghanistan who are knitting. You may love knitting Afghans, but I love crocheting Iraqis.
After our last podcast, I'm starting to think like you because that's immediately what I was seeing too.
Yeah.
This is the Friday night. This is when the juices are flowing.
And by that doesn't mean liquor, people.
No.
It means the creative
we could have a
inner juices.
A drinky drink. So yeah.
We could have a drinky drink. We could. What are you doing?
Nothing.
Are you huffing air?
You guys just keep talking.
Just cut that part out.
He's walking on sunshine.
So you want people to blog about their interest.
Exactly. Yeah. I think there's too much copycatting happening on the internet where we all have to be.
Example.
Well, I mean, I work in I help companies with what's called social media, and there's 100 million people who are social media gurus, a title I very much avoid.
Right.
Yeah.
So everybody's trying to do the same thing, and everybody's kind of regurgitating the same sets of ideas.
Give me an example of some of the ideas that you would get from these particular blogs. Like you're saying, some guy says, hey, I'm a social media guru. Here's what you should be doing, companies. Here's how you market your stuff, or here's how you use blogs or Facebook.
Yeah,
or
like top 10 ways to monetize your blog, top 10 ways to get featured on Dig or Reddit or whatever the heck it became.
Okay.
Top 10 ways to get more fans for your Facebook page, which usually involves giving something that people want away and has absolutely nothing to do with providing people with a reason to visit your Facebook page.
So you say content
is king, and that's the hardest part, and that's the part I can't do for you in a lot of ways.
Right. So then
That pause made me very afraid for a second, but
yeah.
huh?
For people who may want to start a blog, the challenge isn't technical in nature anymore.
Absolutely
the challenge
not.
is having something to say.
The challenge is having something to say and having. I mean, if you're doing it for yourself, you don't have to update very regularly. But again, you want to have some sort of plan in place so you're not doing one blog and then letting it sit for 6 months, because
You're talking about me here, right?
I'm talking about anybody. I'm not talking about.
Well, you are also talking.
I'm talking about I'm talking about myself. Like look at
Well,
me.
it's
Like
kind of like the Faux Pop TV website for 3 years. And now, though,
It's heart wrenching.
yeah, but the encouraging thing is you can always step back up to the plate and just
Yeah.
start delivering content.
And it's all about somebody having something that burns them, right? Something that makes you want to talk.
it's about your passions, and I guess that's the point I was making
Yeah.
earlier. Is like people aren't necessarily talking about their passions. People are trying to go, what can I do that will make me money? Which, you know, in today's society, maybe I think that's
That's your
something
passion.
you have to worry about less and less, frankly. And that what you really should be concerned about, what you're passionate about and how to share that passion with other people.
Agreed.
That's
Whoa.
what's important to me.
Okay. So somebody starts a blog and they're getting their passions on it. And that, in fact, is probably something that could be monetized without them thinking about it, right?
Well, and that's when those really niche things, like nobody wants to, if I started a blog about marketing, online marketing, or like, you
It's
know,
not
how
very
to broadcast your
exciting
blog, nobody's interested in that. There's a million things like that. But growing up, I know somebody who is totally into strawberry shortcake, has a sizable strawberry shortcake doll collection. So if they blogged about, not necessarily, strawberry shortcake is very narrow, but if they blogged about collecting toys from the early
What
80s.
about strawberry shortcake fan fiction? That, like, you'd write stories about
Oh,
strawberry
totally.
shortcake and
peppermint patty?
I don't know. I'm
Peppermint
46.
Patty
I don't know
was-
any of this stuff.
Wasn't she Charlie Brown?
Oh yeah, peppermint patty.
Yeah.
I can't remember any of the other ones.
Care Bears.
There was one that had
Care
a
Bears.
plum pudding.
I don't know.
My Little Pony.
My Little Pony. Yeah.
Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yeah.
So this is classically where all things on the internet came from, is these niche cultures, nerd cultures.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Because remember, what was
Well-
the first thing that got me on the internet, or one of the first things, was Kennedy assassination and conspiracies and in Usenet
I thought you were gonna go like Thundercats.
and Thundercats.
You went really grim, really fast.
I went deep.
Went right deep.
I go deep, Anthony.
Yeah.
I don't surface skim.
When I was 6, I got on the internet. Illuminati.
totally
No, not me.
absolutely. That's what I got into immediately. So here's the thing that we would say then. A blog is good if you have a reason to have a blog, but a blog is not good if you don't have a deep reason to have a blog.
If you have a passion to share, a blog is the right thing to do.
Okay, so how would you go about it? What do you think? Hustle, I know you've done blogs for people.
Sure. I mean, well, there's lots of free services out there, which is what makes the barrier of entry really, really low. You could use something like go to WordPress.com and just use a preset template. You could use Blogger. There's all kinds of services out there.
What they do is they give you what you see is what you get way of just,
Yeah.
you could type in a box and hit
Boom.
a
It's just
button
like
and
using
bang,
a
it's
word
on the
processor.
internet.
And so
Right.
that makes it easy. And there's lots of services out there that can do that for you. And if you want to get it customized, then you can talk to someone like Anthony or myself, and we could take that, a blog engine and customize it into something really, really unique to you.
Right.
But you could get started with like no money at all.
Right.
And
You know how I use blogs, guys? I make my students do their work on a blog. So instead of handing in paper, they go to Blogger, they make a Gmail account or a Google account, they get on Blogger and they put their notes up there, or not their notes, but their assignments up on there. And then no assignments are lost. Nobody's handing in paper, because paper is bad,
Yeah.
especially on my desk, which is a chaotic situation. But I can subscribe to their blogs, and I can see when they updated through RSS feeds, and I can follow their work and see, you didn't do this assignment or that assignment, and there's the reason. And I put my notes up on a blog, and you can go to that blog if you want right now, if you want to show that.
Sure.
But you don't have to.
I think this is leading into another conversation, but I think this is I think you're a genius, frankly.
Get in line, sir. The idea behind this
The
work,
queue is filling up.
I believe it's Mr. Lob EMS 30
Oh, the course code, right?
.blogspot.com. So I put my notes up there. The notes, instead of putting them on a blackboard, I put them up on my blog, and then I project them on the wall. And then when a kid's away and comes in and says, "Hey, Mr. Lob, I was away yesterday because I was abducted by aliens," then I just take that child and I push it over near the computer and I say, "Look in there, son. What do you see there?" And he says, "That's your website." I say, and there are the notes. Now, this is an old one, and I've chosen this one on purpose just because it's an old one. And you can see that I don't use this one right now. This is one that was being used a while ago. And so I just put my notes up there, and I have students go to it. If students are sick or whatever, they can go and look at the blog, and it's always up to date. I can also mark their work by adding a comment. You see comments there.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask, was how do you do marking then?
I can put on a comment. Now, here's the thing. Some kids probably want to be private, their marks, and I could just tell them what their marks are. And that works just fine. But I like the idea of blogging as a tool for my job and as a tool as a student. And I wonder if there are other jobs or other business uses of a blog. And sure enough, there are in a company that's trying to do outreach in some subject, or if they're doing tech support or whatever.
Well, I think like what I've been trying to do more of, and I honestly can say I've failed spectacularly at it, but I've been doing some interesting. What I find interesting or difficult, I've been making videos and putting them on YouTube. So I did one where like I got this drive controller for my Commodore 64. It didn't work. So I made a video about...
Wait a minute. You did this recently?
Yeah. It's on my YouTube channel.
You have a C64?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a Commodore 64. I have the floppy drive. I've got
load
the
star.star.
Load. Yeah. Well, it's load comma.
And comma
load,
8, comma 1 or
load,
something
comma
like
8, comma 1. Load, comma 8's the drive, and comma 1 is load it once it finds
man,
it.
that's taken me back.
So,
Hey, just a question.
Yeah.
Because we did talk about this in episode 2. And I was thinking about this last week. You were talking about that there was a Twitter add-on for the Commodore 64.
Get out of here.
Right?
yeah, there's...
And then that struck me like, how are you fitting 144 characters into a 64?
Well, so basically what there is there's a controller card that plugs in the cartridge slot that extends the capabilities of the hardware, and then you can basically... So I've used it because you can use a memory card, copy the
Right.
software onto the memory card,
Gotcha.
plug it in, because that becomes drive 14.
Right.
Let's back up.
So it's
Why-
a modded 64.
Why do you have a Commodore 64?
Because
You want to
Arrested
play
Development, I
Summer
guess?
Olympics.
Yeah, I want to play Paradroid is the reason why.
Right.
So
What is... I just can't believe you have one.
I've got 3 of them, actually. I have the one I had as a kid. I had one that was put on Facebook that they wanted like $40 for, so I bought it on the spot because they had the monitor and everything. And then I
Wow.
bought a C64C, which was the newest, last model of it online
Right.
to make it work with this controller card.
That is... What do you... Wow. I don't even know what to say. Next up, you're going to get an Amiga.
I never had an Amiga,
Oh, well, you did.
but I think I would.
Well, what I'm gonna
again,
say
the
is-
conversation we had here is if I had infinite space, I would have like a whole slew of old computers.
Would
just
you
'cause I
really?
find that interesting.
Why would
I
you
know.
do that?
Why not make a museum? And you know what you could do with that?
There is one.
Well, I know, but you could take pictures of it and you could talk about it and put it up on a blog.
Yeah, old hardware.
Wait a minute.
And that would be interesting to people,
Yeah.
Wait a
right?
minute.
That's the kind of stuff that you search for and you go, oh my goodness, there's a guy that's done that.
Thank goodness for you, Mark, because I was trying to figure out how we were going to pull this one out.
We
of
don't
the
have to
reeds.
pull it out. That is... I'm surprised that as a hobbyist, you're messing around with a C64 unless you're playing Mule or Space Taxi.
I played Mule. I don't have Mule for it. The real reason, and this is not quite as fascinating, is like as a kid, there's a lot of things I wanted and my family couldn't afford. So now
Right.
that I'm... And a computer is like... A C64 is like $50 that I can acquire those things. I just have to be very careful that I don't end up with a place full of old computers that I never use. Or
Do you know, I'm going to tell you something that you might be interested in. I have original Pong.
do you? Is it Is it the sliders? It's like a wand with a slider on
I
it or
think so,
something.
yeah. But you know what I don't have for it? A power supply.
I can hook you up with that.
Let's talk about that off air. I said this in a tech cast before, I think, or FauxTech before. When my dad brought Pong home, I lost my mind.
Did you know what it was before he brought it home?
I don't know if I did or not.
Yeah.
I don't remember that part. I just remember looking at the TV and thinking, "Oh my God, tennis and ping pong!" Like you would see the different games by putting a different overlay.
Tennis, ping pong. Was there hockey?
I don't know.
Okay.
There was doubles too at some point. I think you could play doubles. Anyway, it was like, what made it so exciting is the same thing that made the C64 exciting or anything like that. It's like, I can play on my TV. I'm participating in my TV.
I can make something happen on the TV instead of just watching it. Yeah.
And that's why blogging is so awesome, I think, for me. Even if I can't blog, look what he's going through. Look what he's
Paperboy, yeah.
That's all right. You guys just
even I mean, we're talking about blogging again because it's the first time you see the internet, you don't participate in it. But as soon as you start to participate in it, it's a whole new thing. Like, you realize something about it.
Well, and you start. That's the thing that I think out of all of the factors, I would say even above, because this comes usually before you make money from your blog, if that were to happen, is the community of people who have the same interests that you have that just spring out of the woodwork when you start sharing your passions about these things. That's what keeps you going.
It is.
Ideally.
Well, it's true. And the only way to get there is by starting to put things out. Slow and steady. And I like what you said earlier, Anthony, that the focus shouldn't be, okay, how can I monetize this right away?
Well, that's just a gateway to frustration.
It is. The key is content. Period. And if you have good content, there's always going to be a niche market. And that, again, is the beauty of the internet and what we have available to us today, this connectivity that people all around the world, you may be able to glean 500 people all around the world of all the billions of people that are interested in your particular topic and the way you express it.
Let's look at this, how San Diego Comic-Con used to be a lot smaller. But the internet I think, has been a huge factor in Comic-Con becoming 150,000 people in a weekend going to this ridiculous exhibition. And when I say ridiculous, I don't not like it. It's awesome. It's crazy, and it's great.
But there is a point where, this is a bit off topic, but there's a point where these San Diego Comic-Con, it might become so big. So what you'll have these smaller cons focused on one particular aspect of comic books.
Well,
and I think that's very healthy.
Gen
as well.
Con, the one that's
thank you. Yeah,
Gen Con is a certain type of gaming, or the whatchamacallit guys, Penny Arcade
PAX,
guys,
PAX East and West,
or BlizzCon.
BlizzCon, yeah.
And the idea behind the splintering is the idea that made Comic-Con in the first place. And that's what's awesome about it. It's endlessly spinning out, and that's what I liked about, was it Calacanis who started that group of related blogs like Gawker and Gizmodo and all that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There's a company that
I'm not sure.
I can't remember the name of the company, and so this is like just ignorance.
I know what you're talking
trumpeting
about,
ignorance. But Jason Calacanis was an entrepreneur and a thinker who maybe didn't invent it, but he packaged together some groups of blogs like Joystick and Kotaku or whatever. And again, I don't think I'm saying them. But these families of blogs were brought together into one unit.
Yeah, and they each had a different segment.
A different focus. Yeah. But it was a way of trying to maybe commodify or maybe turn into a stronger force or unit, this group. And look at what Huffington Post recently sold to AOL, or combined with AOL. I don't know how you word it. It was a
like a stock swap.
Somebody bought somebody, and I don't know who was bigger or more valuable there, because it sure wasn't AOL that had all the power. But this idea that a blog has some kind of strength by the community that you mentioned, it is exactly the opposite of what a blog would appear to be, isn't it? A blog appears to be one lone madman.
A lone voice in the wilderness.
Trumpeting this stupid stuff that nobody cares about. But in fact, what you find is the good blogs are the opposite. It's groups of people coming to a place like Boing Boing or whatever and contributing whatever they find from all over the place.
And that's what's interesting, again, in a previous conversation we've had, is like, we think of technology as kind of lone people in their basements or garages working on projects. But really what the internet has allowed us to do is we're lone geeks working together with other lone geeks. And the things that can be accomplished are fairly incredible.
And there's maybe more parallel activity rather than face-to-face activity. Which is, by the way, we're paralleling these three screens.
Yeah.
Abel Gance's Napoleon, was it 1927 triptychs? Anyway, the interest that you bring to a blog and the passion that you bring to a blog are the very thing that could make it worth money. Is that not the case?
That's exactly, yeah, that's the ironic part of that's how blogs make money. Is by, well, I shouldn't say that's exactly it.
Well,
but
they make money when you generate community.
yeah, you generate community and then.
But
you
that
either-
comes from maybe your interest in.
And that comes from your interest. And that's through selling, and I'm talking about things like perhaps selling merchandise and, getting the word out. I don't know about things like AdSense or those where you're basically looking at raw traffic.
I don't think that people make money from ads on their blogs. I think
used
there may
to,
be
yeah.
some companies would that are giant, but I don't think that's the way
This is
to
kind
do
of
it.
the dark side. I think maybe Mark's going to touch on that by much.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, obviously there was a time where you can make a lot of money
Yeah.
gaming it. But actually the thought I was thinking about when you were talking about blogs and selling products, I think there's been it's been difficult for companies and corporations to use blogging in a legitimate way, because I think blogging, it began it's almost like punk rock, or it's like it's like a movement. It's like I've got my own voice. I've got a place where I can express myself. So when you have
you see the corporation and you get
the
upset.
corporation starting to use Twitter and to use a blog, you still don't trust it, right? So I think there's and of course that's becoming more and more common. And I think, and Anthony, you could probably speak to this
Well,
a lot more.
it's a little bit of
clearly.
what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Is helping a business.
So how do you do
corporate
that though
mouthpiece?
when there's that perception out there? What are the steps that you take? Because obviously you want to try to remove that sense that, hey, you're just trying to sell something to me.
Like you just have a businessman walking up to a group of teenage kids and be like, "I'm hip to your jive.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me show you some amazing products."
Well, don't they use that?
I'm getting pantsed.
They use that strategy of, I can't remember the term, but they basically get a street team of bloggers, or a street team, like companies are kind of getting kids to pump Facebook, or semi-kids to pump Facebook.
Well,
and
there's that gaming of the system. There's a term called astroturfing,
what's that?
which is basically because you can use software for anything now. You basically use software to create a dozen fake people,
right.
and you basically use those fake people to try to gain influence on, say, forums or message boards or things like
Right.
that. I think the thing you're talking about, which is like basically, well, what they do, it was kind of like had a brief phase before companies realized they could hire what was called a community manager.
Exactly.
A community manager is basically reaching out to your customers and trying to build a community around what your company is doing and trying to get some information back from them as to what they would like to see from
Usually
you.
pumping through message boards or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. More like now a lot of that's done through Twitter and Facebook. But
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm talking about is this idea that people used to kind of get kids involved by literally paying them, and those
Give them
kids would say,
stickers
"Hey,
or-
have you
yeah.
heard the new something album? And how great is that?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what about this idea that was popular maybe 4 years ago, where companies were saying they were going to encourage their employees to become bloggers for transparency's sake, and talk about the process within the company, and let ideas filter up. So like Toyota, I think, was a company that had this, and then maybe even on an intranet, you would be blogging your thoughts and health and safety issues at the company and tip of the day and so on. What about that idea?
I think there's a number of businesses that were very successful in doing that. They basically, what they did is they created, I'm going to use very general terms, but they created basically Facebook, but it sits on a server inside of a company. It's not visible outside. So you had different groups, different pages, and everybody would share information throughout the whole group internally to the company. I think that's a very good idea.
And then a boss could monitor that, or have somebody monitor that and get back to him.
The
What's
point
the
of
feeling
it,
here?
yeah, the point of that was kind of to create a group of equals towards a common purpose. So, the ideal situation is that everybody would have a chance to get their voice heard, and they wouldn't have to go through the gatekeepers of like their managers and their managers' managers. Everybody would kind of see a pool of company-wide ideas.
Right. Well, the way that I would use monitoring blogs or use blogs within my company is almost like the way that I would use it at school. When if a student adds me in Facebook, I don't pry into their lives. I'm not looking at it from that perspective, and I don't I don't try and track them and find out what they're doing. But if a student adds me and I happen to see that a student is having a bad day and I know why, I can deal with that student in a way that gives me a leg up on a teacher who just, take your hat off or whatever, and challenges a kid who's lost a grandparent or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And within a company, I can see that being valuable as well. And I think it's also valuable when a company blogs, if they blog in truth and not just as a marketing ploy, because what you can do is create a certain kind of awareness to elements of your company or your product that other people wouldn't necessarily think about. And what I'm referring to is happening at Twitter the last 3 or 4 days. A comedian named Michael Ian Black has started a lobby that he wants to be a spokesman for Taco Bell. And if you check Michael Ian Black's Twitter, it's probably about this. Now, he swears a lot, so I don't know what Taco Bell is going to say. But there's a groundswell of interest around this. And Taco Bell is almost peer pressured by groups of people being interested to be involved. And what'll happen is, if Michael Ian Black is hired as a spokesman, all those people who were involved in that on Twitter might feel like a certain amount of power that they didn't have before.
Right.
Boy, we had a hand in this. And when a company opens up themselves that way, using blogging, for example, they can create some kind of what is this?
New spokesman.
Is this a
Taco
video
Bell's.
for it?
That's probably the best way to get an overview.
Wow, I've never seen this.
I think the interesting part about that conversation, Rand, is like the people who are doing marketing at Taco Bell want ideas.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
someone can come to them with an idea, like that's very helpful to them.
Well, that really didn't work like anticipated.
Of course not.
Create your own.
Per usual.
But what did come out of that was that, there were a lot of people that said they tweeted to him, I'm dropping you, I'm sick of this, it's not funny. But it doesn't matter if it's all advertising for Taco Bell. And anytime a company can get something happening, that's ad
And they
share
have to
and mind share.
look at it that way. It's like the Old Spice commercials, right? That were a brilliant campaign, hired some young guys to put these ads together, and it took a product that was
Moribund.
like old. That's what my grandfather uses, and made it cool and hip. And they were using things like comedy and using viral video.
Well, I
and all
think
that
they
kind of
were
stuff
given
too.
freedom too.
They were
right?
given total freedom. In fact, I heard an interview with them recently, and that exactly what they said. They did not ask us to change anything. They let us do exactly what we wanted to do.
I just like this to state, out of some sort of bizarre loyalty, is I like the Bruce Campbell.
I thought you were going to say that
I'm
you
sad
you
that
were
there
gonna
wasn't
say-
more Bruce Campbell.
I thought you were going to say that you used Old Spice.
The problem with Old Spice is Old Spice smells like Old Spice. I think the reason this campaign is successful is because they also have new smells.
I think there's a subtle other thing here that a lot of people. I can't believe we're playing this old video again.
I don't know if you've seen this before, people at home.
No, there's a million of them.
There's a subtle undercurrent here that a lot of people maybe don't know about. Is that a lot of white men wish they were black men?
Yeah, because they've said, just look at their bodies, man.
Well, I think that brown people, particularly, this is gonna get into race.
Okay, I'm just trying to stick with you here.
I think black people, their skin tone looks nicer than white people. Like in this
Black
video,
people never look pasty. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, I think as we get older, white guys, we look puffy and pasty and weird, and a person who has brown skin, they look so good for so long.
What's the saying?
And they
Black
just look
don't
so
crack,
attractive.
right?
What's that?
Black don't crack.
Of course, that is a saying.
It's a saying.
Anyway, I think there's a subtle undercurrent there, is that a lot of guys look at that kind of a male and
I
think,
never thought about that.
I think it's real.
Because the funny premise is like the guy is trying to get the lady to influence her husband to be more like him, but you're saying that's a stealth way of getting the message, undercurrent message.
I don't know if it's just in my head and I have a subtle homoeroticism about black men. But I know this, and ever since I was a little kid, when I see images of black men of a certain age or whatever, I see those as images of power. And I never saw black men, from the time I was a little kid, I never saw them as images of weakness, or like a lot of people who are racist would look at an image of a black male and say there's something not good about that, or there's something that's bad, or I would always see it as, wow, that's something to aspire to. Muhammad Ali, you know, was maybe huge in that for me as a kid. And I would look at a black male and think, look at how big he is, how perfect he looks, and he looks so awesome, and he's so handsome. And that plays into that. And perhaps it's racist of me to say this, and I shouldn't even bring it up, but I think that ad in particular has an element of that wish fulfillment. Like, look at that man.
For sure.
And you know, I'm just throwing it out there, and maybe I hope everybody sees it for what it is. Growing up, I had a friend. We come from the whitest little community, and when I was in grade 3 or 4, a black kid moved into town, and he sat behind me in school. And my initial thought was, oh, I wish I was like him. And I'm sure he thought, this is horrifying to be the only black kid in this community. And I just thought, I wish I could be like him. And he looked like I wished that I could have that look and that power. And I don't know what it came from. It had to be Muhammad Ali.
Well, it's partly because it's different. Like, you're used to dealing with, you look at other kids that look like you. This kid looks completely different. You're like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, he looked amazing.
Like, when you're younger, you're way more open to differences too, I think. So
yeah, it's just so strange. And when people would say something racist, like, I don't know, things racist people would say, like, oh, you know, whatever they say, I would always think, how can you say that? Like, from the earliest age, they just, like, when I would watch Soul Train or any sport where there are a lot of black men, they're just figures of strength and power and like masculinity in a way that a lot of white guys just don't seem to have in the media. We don't have the same projection. Who do you want to be? Larry Bird or Michael Jordan? You want to be Michael Jordan. Larry Bird looks goofy and awkward. He's amazing, but he doesn't look like Michael Jordan.
That's a good blog topic as well.
Yeah, no, this could go all, because I was a big Utah Jazz fan, and so there's two paradigms. There's John Stockton,
Karl Malone.
Karl Malone is like chiseled from granite. He's the best built physique in all of NBA forever.
Amazing. He was amazing.
So it's very interesting. I remember because I mean, I was a kid when I was playing basketball. I'd love to be like him, because just to be able to dunk, just to have that sort of power on the basketball court is amazing.
By the way, this is not just my peccadillo. If you look recently, again, on Twitter, I believe it was Kirstie Alley, who's in a show like Dancing with Stars or something. She was on The Tonight Show Thursday night this past week, and the UFC new lightweight heavyweight champion, whose name is John Bones Jones, he was on Jay Leno as well on The Tonight Show. And she's posing with him, and she's holding his shirt up and pointing at his abs and saying, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And to me, that's, again, there's that, the actual stereotype that I see is that image of power and strength and masculinity that somehow we just don't have. It's crazy.
It's true.
But anyway, that's my kind of my deconstruction of that Old Spice ad, which has nothing to do with technology.
Well, no, it has a lot to it, and you're getting into the underlying part of the marketing.
But it could be just me.
It could be, but the other thing that they did in that campaign wasn't just the awesome commercials on television. Probably the most brilliant thing they did was they'd have people Twitter in, and they would on the fly
respond back.
They had a team of writers sitting in a room, and they would like write a script really quick. They had all these props, and they would shoot it and put it up on YouTube within like hours.
It's amazing.
And they did, I think the guy said they did something like 400 of those in 2 days. Something like that.
That's almost inconceivable.
And it's all done live, all in one camera move, one camera shot, eh? It's crazy.
Yeah, they just had like 8 props, and then they just...
The gist of that being that they personalize it, and there's the example of a corporation. I know it's not using a blog, but it's using this kind of medium and this kind of...
it's the same idea.
It's the same idea. I mean, what we're doing here really is a blog. As much as we're not typing and putting something.
Well, do you remember when vlogging? Vlogging was going to be a trend.
Vlogging, yes.
That didn't pan out like they thought.
Well, it turned into podcasts, video podcasts.
I have people ask me though. I have people because I call what I was calling Good Morning Goddard a video log.
Right.
Just because if I call it a podcast, people didn't quite.
They don't know what
make the leap from iPod.
We're back to Apple again.
Yeah.
Darn Apple.
I'm not.
Well,
away. Let's move away.
How do they do it? What I like to, speaking of podcasting and the idea that podcasting is filling the same gap. Are companies using podcasts? I know every comedian right now is jumping on ever since Mark Maron with WTF. And I'm not saying he was first, but he got a lot of press. And
and
there's not a comedian that isn't doing something.
Yeah. Well, and comedies. Well, no, I'm not going to.
It's perfectly designed for a podcast.
I was going to say that. I mean, there's a real physical element to comedy, but comedy and a lot of radio shows, that's kind of where moving into podcasting makes a lot of. I'm thinking of Merlin Mann. I really like listening to him.
Oh, he's very talented.
Yeah.
He's really witty. It's awesome.
Yeah. Hot Dogs Ladies on Twitter.
Yeah. The thing about a company doing that is, again, you have to jump that barrier of not putting out corporate message.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever listened to Blizzard's podcast. They had a Blizzcast, and they did it very infrequently, and it felt like you were just getting party line all the way through. I was a Blizzard fan for years, and still am. I like that company, but they were not letting it be natural, like this flow that whatever, good or ill, that you get.
Sorry, do you mean it like sounded scripted then, or just?
It wasn't scripted. It was that they're not going to tell you what's going to happen down the road. The company is very closed mouth about what they do.
Yeah.
But you need to, if you're going to have a company
And
podcast.
the thing that interests viewers and listeners and viewers, people that are making predictions or presumptions and assuming, and kind of what we're doing here, in some of our dialogues, is wondering where things are going, what could happen next. And people, that could happen. That is possible. That has potential.
Let me just quickly, you need an open flow of ideas.
Yeah.
And if you have corporate message in front of you, we can't talk about this.
Yeah.
We can't talk about that. It becomes less interesting, I think, for
sure.
So case in point is Minecraft. Notch, who is the developer of, what is his company's called name?
It's European German, isn't it?
They're Danish. His company,
Danish.
Jambo Design. I can't remember. It's got his company has a weird name, but
It's funny that I said European German and you went, Danish. All of them.
over there.
Oh, those
over
guys.
there. Because as he was developing the game, he was actively blogging as to where he was in the process, where he was trying to get and what bugs he was encountering. So that's candy for guys like me who are in
the core audience for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So when you can talk about the problems you're having, like a real person talking to other real people, saying, "I'm trying to implement this feature," and guess what? The best part, what I really love reading, because I think I read this shortly before I talked to Mark on episode 2, was there was a development journal from the guys who were making Ultima Underworld, the first one. And they were talking about the bugs they had, and they would send QA reports to, I think it was EA at the time, and they get a report back. And one was, in one of the levels, they had art assets from another game, which was like a red Corvette. So they decided just to stick it in this Ultima Underworld dungeon crawl game, just as like a lark.
I remember that game, by the way. You're taking me back.
Yeah. They got a bug report from EA saying, the red Corvette on level 5, you can't get in or drive it. Not it's there, but and so I thought that was the funniest. He said it was the funniest bug report he ever heard because they forgot to pull it back out before they shipped it.
Right.
They shipped it not to get released, but to have approvals basically.
To check the gold master.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty hilarious. That stuff. That behind the scenes stuff I love, and
Well, everybody loves behind the scenes stuff.
And why aren't companies giving it to you?
Well, that is a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
I'll refer to the producer Scott Mednick, who we've been lucky enough to have some dealings with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles documentary. He was producing and working on, and I don't want to get the credits incorrect, but he was one of the producers, exec or whatever, on Superman Returns.
Right.
And if you remember that movie, which was shot in Australia, had tons of daily video blogging going on right from the director. And remember, Peter, what's his name, did it with King Kong as well.
Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson. And I was riveted by that stuff. I maybe didn't watch everything. I didn't watch it all the time. But whenever I watched it, I thought, man, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Put some dailies up, generate interest and excitement, keep the fans going.
All the movie nerds, all the filmography nerds,
absolutely.
all the
and show us what's happening. And Mark and I have been trying to develop a business model around offering that service to companies. We'll come and shoot your behind the scenes, and we'll get some of that stuff happening
and demonstrate the value of that.
People companies, there's so little money available in that world that appears that money is just not there. I mean, you could go to, www.stormingjuno.com, and you could see one that we did for this history television show called Storming Juno. And you can see some of our behind the scenes stuff there. And it looks great. But it was just a business model that they didn't have a place to put in their budget and in their thinking. They did it. And kudos to them for pushing that through and making it happen with us and giving us the chance. And, it worked out that it was great. But if I were a director or a producer, I would think this is a huge marketing angle that's untapped or seems to be untapped.
And I think it taps into the problem with, and this taps into like online marketing, social media, is companies are afraid to, they all want to rigidly manage their message and their brand.
Oh, for sure.
It's difficult to share. You know, people understand that when we do business, it's imperfect human beings trying to satisfy the needs of other imperfect human beings.
Speak for yourself, Anthony.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. But I think so for companies, it's just really difficult to let that happen behind the scenes.
And I totally get that. I think too, to me, the issue is also largely budgetary. That when people build a budget, let's say you are going to launch a new product, you're spending so much of your money on overhead and just getting that thing out the door. If somebody came to you and said, let's throw a rider on here and let's be real meta and let's make a process for watching you get that out the door, someone's going to say, okay, but I don't have time and the wherewithal to do that, to monitor that, to pay for it, to even just to say my ideas. Some days when I'm working, I don't want to say what I'm doing. I just want to do it.
Right.
And not have to think about it from that outside perspective.
Well, that's a funny part, because I find like a lot of these shows, business type shows, I shouldn't say a lot of them because I haven't seen hardly many. Like I hear about like rich, successful guy either comes into an existing business or starts a business, and they're shooting that process. I don't care about rich, successful guys starting a business.
Right.
I care about guys with no money, maybe got like 50 grand cobbled together from their family and relatives, trying to develop like a game or trying to develop a hardware project or something cool with no money, just a group of people with a dream. Those are the people, that's a documentary I want to watch.
I'll take it even further. Do you remember a TV show that was a TV show? I sound like I'm 89. There was a TV show I remember one time. And,
Old man.
well, there was Andy Griffith. He got his hair cut. There was
They had to eat these pickles.
a show called Classic Albums where they talked about the production of an album.
Absolutely. Love that
I
show.
would watch
I love that show.
all day long for albums that I really like.
Yeah.
I wish every company would keep that process and show
And there
us
is
what's happening.
definitely a huge attempt at.
Well, I
bringing
wonder
that
if
kind
Boy
of
in December
content.
is doing that.
Well, we are doing that with our Boy in December podcast. It's maybe not as interesting.
Well, if it was the Rolling Stones in 1974.
That's what I'm getting at. Like I know this is probably boring in some regards, but if this was U2, like if they were doing the exact same thing that we're doing.
Well, yeah, if you could see Muse in the studio creating their next album.
I was going to say if it was U2, I'd probably be more bored, to be completely honest.
Well, whatever.
Oh,
but pick a band that you're into, right? So we're just doing it now instead of when we're famous. What's wrong with that?
Listen, I like it as an idea, and there's a certain potentially an arrogance involved, but for a company who wants to sell a product, you're already arrogantly saying that people want your product. So why not assume that they want to see some things about that? And not everybody wants to go to the sausage factory. Right. And I don't mean a bar that's downtown that caters to a certain group of young men. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a lot of people don't want to see how stuff is made. They don't care. Just give me the book. Give me the album. Give me the whatever.
But
there's
for
a
that
whole
niche
group
market
who look at behind the scenes on the DVDs they buy.
Yeah.
And we might be those people for the different products.
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's a huge market that should be overlooked.
I think that's interesting because the thing I push, again, being in a related business, is trying to push companies to do digital first for their marketing. And because strange
dollars
thing,
are effective.
Well,
there,
the dollars. That's the thing, is it comes down to the dollars. So you're saying basically trying to get the dollars made for like a company behind the scenes, which I think would be very interesting across a wide range of people, and would help sell your product further by helping people trust the process of your company or understand what's happening behind the scenes.
Right.
Agreed.
And allowing a transparency that if people make mistakes, that's okay. Because
but we're still in the process of trying to wean. I mean, I'll use the word wean is probably wrong, but
it's
trying
funny.
to get
It's
companies to stop using, because they understand print, and to move more from print towards digital, because you get so much more bang for your buck. But companies are still really tentative at making that leap, and I think that extends into what you're trying to achieve there too.
While digital is more cost effective in many ways, but to get a good digital message, sometimes you have to go and get video cameras and shooters and writers and directors and editors, and that costs a lot of money. So the front costs are high.
Right.
Now, what I think is good about that is that you have a certain amount of control over your digital message. Funny, you said that people are brand conscious and they want to control brand and they don't want to let somebody else, tarnish the brand or push it in a direction that they don't feel is the right direction. But what I think happens is if you're a company that encourages blogging and vlogging and podcasting. I hate that we said vlogging, video podcasting or whatever. Even if you're allowing certain things out the door, you're at least managing it in a way that is not happening in a magazine where your material is in there with somebody else's material. So you advertise in Playboy magazine, does that say something about you would want to say? If you put an ad on for your whatever your product was on Ellen back in the day when she said she was a lesbian, and you're suddenly, this isn't the way I want my message. I don't want my my chocolate in this peanut butter. So by putting it on the internet, it's wherever you want it. So the content sits in your cluster, even though it's on the same internet that all this horrible stuff is on as well. Anyway, that's where I think the value is, and plus it's pull, not push.
Yeah,
you're not shoving it in my face. Yeah. I go to your site.
Yeah, and that's that's one of the strong philosophies I cater to as well. Is like you I think there's a place still for traditional advertising.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that the main strength of traditional advertising is helping direct people to what's happening online, because the really cool things are always happening online.
Okay,
not in the paper.
Let's look at it another way. Why can't the same advertising that's on traditional be online? That's what I don't understand. There should be no distinction. If I read a book or see the same information on a website or read it on an iPad, it's the same information. It's just that the delivery vehicle changes. And although McLuhan said the medium is the message, I would say to some degree the message is also meta to the medium. Although it is changed, the message can be still there. So I look at the print ad, and it's in the newspaper, and it might be less valuable than the same print ad on your website that I went to on purpose, right? So the intention of the viewer is higher, and so that the grab is bigger. My view.
No, it's interesting. Actually, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking that the difference is that in times past, we've had very distinct separate mediums. There's a television, there's a magazine, there's a newspaper. You know what I mean? They're very obviously different, where now everything's melting together all into the same spot, and the brain, those of us that are sitting around 100 or like 3 or 4 screens all day every day, it's easy for us to assimilate that data, and it just makes all the sense in the world that should be the way it is. But we're dealing with a lot of people that are still so used to getting that Sunday paper, and that's where I get that, and then I turn on the news at 6 o'clock, and that whole mindset is going to take some time to what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, the separate things on the plate are being stewed.
Yeah,
and some people
being
don't
stewed.
like stew.
And maybe even though we know they all work and they all look exactly the same on the screen, if not better, people's attention span and the way that they're focused in on it isn't the same yet.
Let's look
on the mass scale.
Let's take that just really quickly, and we don't want to go too deep into that, and look at Netflix. Netflix. When it first came to Canada, we evaluated it and we're thinking, this is pretty good, but there's not a lot of stuff on it. It's exploded. Would you not say? There's so much stuff on it.
Yeah, and stuff.
And growing all the time. Yeah. And to me, everything is becoming Netflix.
Sure.
I don't have to buy the Sunday paper to see your ad. I can see your ad when I choose to see it.
I absolutely agree. But still, the stumbling block for a lot of people is to watch Netflix, I have to plug in a network cable. I have to, you know what I mean? Like just that in itself.
I'm taking that out of it.
No.
You still had to plug in your TV and plug in your cable.
Yes, but that's something we've been doing for 50 years.
I agree.
Right. And so we're in this kind of transitional state where there's people like Anthony and Rand and myself and all kinds of people out there that are trying to come up with the business model, come up with the way that we can incorporate these old mediums into a different package. Like, look what
old media.
What's the new iPad newspaper that just came out?
Oh yeah,
a couple weeks ago.
Rupert Murdoch.
The Rupert Murdoch thing. And the paywall and all that. And
the Phil? I don't remember. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. but anyway, at least there's these attempts to bring it down. And I think the question arises: should we be repackaging the old medium on the internet, or should
Oh my
we
God,
be
yes.
coming? Yeah, I agree. I'm just asking the question.
Who
Because I think here's what I'm trying to say. I think a lot of people are wasting their time trying to come up with something new when the tried and true methods of advertising and getting the message out are tried and true. It really isn't the medium, like your quote was.
Look, man,
not that long
if
ago.
somebody puts old Hogan's Heroes on a view on demand on Netflix,
Right.
guys are going to watch. And when I say guys, I it's mostly probably males that like that show of a certain age, and
Yeah.
people will watch that show because we wanted to be Hogan.
Absolutely.
If somebody puts old I Dream of Jeannie or old whatever, some
interesting.
joker will watch it,
Yeah.
and that wouldn't maybe have watched it if it was, on the TV.
I think talking about print, I think there's 2 points I'd like to make. One, in the magazine business, I don't understand why you cannot download PDFs of all of their back issues.
Right.
I think that would make perfect sense. Even
well,
if you
some
had to-
companies are doing that, are they
some
not?
companies do that, and I think I think that would be interesting. The second thing I like to talk about is like ways that technology can enhance the physical media experience. So if you buy a newspaper, then we're looking at the new technologies coming out, which is like augmented reality.
Come with the scan.
To a certain extent, QR codes or those funny things.
Right.
So you buy a paper newspaper, physical newspaper, but in conjunction with your iPad and the iPad's camera, you can do all sorts of interesting things or get different views of data. I'm thinking like 3D graphs or something like that with the. So
Right.
there's still room.
It's a synthetic read.
Yeah.
And when I say synthetic, multiple input read.
Yeah, you've bought a physical paper, but because you have a digital device, you can pull all sorts of information into that
Your
experience.
smartphone experience
Yeah. I know
what you're
enhances
saying.
it. Yeah, totally. Well, I like that idea, and I don't know exactly if that segues back into our companies should blog. But, well, of course it does. Companies should also consider multiple vehicles of delivery for their message, and their medium isn't necessarily the one that they have to stick with. If a company like, a New York Times, and apparently their model, their paywall is really high. I read that recently. They're shooting for a super high paywall. If it's the right price and it's the right material, people are going to be all over it. They may not make the same amount that they made before,
Yeah.
but, then again, they might make more depending on what they find.
I think what they have to do is what they have to offer is very unique, and I think that's where this traditional paper throwing up a paywall problem strategy has fallen down. Is like if you're going to offer a paper and simply have it online and charge people for that, I think that's where you see the readership dropping off. If you're going to
For sure.
put it behind a paywall and offer a really unique experience behind the paywall that's beyond what you would expect from a newspaper, then I could see it being successful.
I would say that a paywall is not the answer. Either it's got to be micro payments,
Yeah.
or it's got to be exchange for advertising in some way.
And why would back to the blog thing, why would I pay so much a month for, a very, very focused set of opinions or whatever, when there are 1,000 opinions out there on blogs about the exact same subject that I can sort through and listen.
Well, that's the battle
to.
is do you want to watch or read rather the material that is supposed to be at a higher standard of objectivity,
Right.
Or do you want to read the guy who's in Libya who's saying this is my opinion,
Right.
right? And he's on the ground there, but is his opinion
and I guess that
professional? or
really
whatever?
the answer is we need
You want
all.
both.
We want it
exactly.
all.
It's a plurality.
Yeah.
But the thing that I want to see, and I don't know how this is linked, but I wouldn't mind if I had to pay $15 more a month for my internet, and my internet was, here comes lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And if everybody had to pay that, and a percentage of that goes to the New York Times, and a percentage of that goes to the Atlantic Monthly or to, Warner Brothers Music or whatever, and I just get a lot of stuff happening. I'm participating in a number of different media that have paywalls with a one size fits all or a
Kind
one
of sounds
payment
like a
gets me
cable
everywhere.
company.
I was gonna thank you. It's like the reverse cable company
Yeah.
model, where the cable companies were offering TV, now they're offering internet.
Yeah.
Now you're looking at ISPs offering kind of like an a la carte.
I'm not
So you
even
get your
saying
Netflix subscription with your ISP fee. You get like you get like magazine subscriptions
That's
or whatever.
right.
That's interesting.
I don't want it to be net neutrality style, because I don't think that's the answer. I want it to be a choice for the material. Like, I don't want to pay for, now you can have more bandwidth. I would rather pay for more access to more whatever it is that I enjoy. And I think that's, everybody has to agree to pay for that. And then, Sigur Rós gets their cut, and everybody can have access to Sigur Rós. And then what becomes valuable then are gatekeepers and portal choosers. So let's say I follow you, and you say, here's a band I really like, and here's their music. And then I listen to you, but the band gets a cut. You know what I mean? Like, they're cut because I'm getting the music.
Sure.
But rather than a big company tell me where it is, I like your blog. Like Pitchfork is a good example.
It's kind of like affiliate. Like I suggest this band, and
But
here's a link
because
to
you
get,
like it.
because that's where the transparency is so important. Like, you have to say, like, first of all, if you're buying their album through this article I'm writing, I do get a piece of that, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
That being said, this is fantastic. Here's a free track you can listen to, or some samples or whatever. I'm not sure how you would. I understand what
I
you're
want to see
going.
the whole thing. I want it
Yeah.
paid for when I'm paying. And so
Yeah.
what I was actually getting at a different skew of the issue you're saying. But
Okay.
what I'm saying is, rather than I go to a record store, I buy a CD, I come home, I go to iTunes, I buy a tune, I come home. Once I'm on the internet, I'm paying a fee that gives me access to everything. And now, rather than go to iTunes and find out what's hot or what's not, I'm just reading someone's blog, and someone says, blah, 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 I love this new Sigur Rós album, and I can just
Right.
have it and listen to it.
I mean, that sounds very wonderful.
And then I'm paying for the access to that, as I'm paying for the access
Sure.
to read your blog, and I'm paying for the access to go to a website that Sigur Rós has, and you know what I mean? Everything is all of a one. So then the value becomes not the I guess I don't like it that I'm want to be go to this site, pay this money, read the New York Times. Go to this site, pay this money, get this new Radiohead album. Go to this site, pay this money, and get whatever I get from video on demand. I would like to have pay one fee, and
I
then
think-
I can create these pools and communities.
And don't
that
you
I
think that's exactly what you're talking about is what every major online company is trying to become. That's what Apple's trying to do. That's what Amazon's trying to
Absolutely,
do.
but-
They're trying to be that one-stop portal. And
But
what
you
you're
know
talking
how
about,
they're doing it.
right? They're on the
Per-
backs of social networking, on the backs of
But also
my
per-
likes and dislikes.
per something. I don't want it to be per something.
I see what you're saying. You want a subscription model
Because
You want-
I don't even want it to be a subscription. I just want it to be that I guess I'm looking for something that can't happen.
Yeah,
No, I mean,
universal a la carte
And
media rights.
everybody
Yes.
pays.
Yeah.
We all pay. Do you
Love
want
it.
to be on the internet? Yes. Then
Yeah.
guess what?
Yeah.
You pay X.
I think it's a
and
great
you
idea.
get A to Z.
You can download all the movies, all the music, all the TV shows.
Yeah, well, what that does
That's
is
your price
it
for getting
eliminates
on the-
piracy. It eliminates, because everybody's paying the same rate. If you want to use this medium, then here's the cost. I mean, I think it's a great idea. The
But-
problem you're going to have is the splits and all that
I
like,
know.
in this
I
corporate
know.
world.
It's-
This is where
It's a nightmare. It
it's,
can only work in communist Russia.
it's a wonderful thought, though, and it's something we should push.
It would have to be run by Joseph Stalin.
In fact, the people
Everybody
who have
pay
the
internet.
people who have
Uncle
that
Joe.
model down are the torrent sites,
Yeah, they do. You're right.
right?
You're right.
They have that model down, and they have
Yeah,
a
they do.
donate button, of course, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But-
Well, people don't donate. A small percentage donates.
Yeah. some
And who
people do.
clicks on the ads? Anyway, listen, I know it's pie in the sky. I know it's ridiculous.
No, I actually love the idea. I hope the people that powers
Well,
that
I-
be, the people that hold the keys are listening.
It was completely
they are.
theoretical until you brought up the torrent or the torrent site idea, which is right. Like, they aggregate so many different types
Yeah.
of content. Now, if they could have a way where basically you paid, like, you could download anything you want to download from Pirate Bay,
Yeah.
download it. The artists get paid. You pay like $10 a month, and you expand that to be basically
And it's kind of what
all-encompassing.
they attempted to do with Napster when it was bought
Well,
up, right?
listen, let me use a Napster story.
Sure.
Everyone has this exact same Napster story. I'm not going to say anything interesting or unusual. I was in Napster when it first started.
Yeah.
And I was listening to music that this particular guy had. So literally, like what I was telling you, like the maven or the mentor, whatever you want to say. So there's a guy who had a lot of interesting music, and I found him because he had one band that I liked. I don't even remember the band, or I don't even remember what the album was, but he had this series of songs, and right under it was the first Coldplay hit,
Right.
which I think was Yellow or Shivers or something like that. And I didn't know Coldplay, but he had a whole bunch of other songs that I liked. So I just said, I'll take a listen to Coldplay. I played it. I loved it. I went and I said to my wife, hey, you got to hear this band, Coldplay. And I said to everybody I know, hey, this band Coldplay.
Yeah.
And I downloaded a bunch of Coldplay stuff, and now I like Coldplay. Well, guess what? I go see them in concert. I
Yeah.
buy their stuff. And that process
Oh, I agree.
created a fan where there was
Yes.
no fan.
That was like me and the White Stripes. Was like somebody said you should try this
Yeah.
this band called the White Stripes. I'm like, okay, oh yeah, this is
Yeah,
this
there's
is very good.
no doubt what you're saying is true. Like the way the record industry, the movie industry, have been so afraid of
Well,
that kind of free content.
I totally
scenario.
know why they're afraid of it.
I know why they're
It
afraid,
makes
but
total sense. And you know what? After Napster collapsed and the whole thing went, belly up or whatever, and it was bad, then you have this moral quandary. And so I thought, I want to buy stuff. I want to pay for what I get, but I don't want to pay by the song. I don't want to pay by the band, because guess what? I don't know I like the band until I listen to it.
right.
So somehow we need a system that's not just you can listen to the first 10 seconds for free and then you have
Right.
to buy.
Well, I have a feeling that's about to change with that particular. There's rumor that's about to change. I mean, Zune Marketplace has been doing that, where it's all you can eat, right? You pay $14 a month or whatever
Right.
it is. It's all you can eat. If you like, you can send me a playlist. I can do. If I'm a member, I can download
Yeah.
them all to my Zune. So those models are
a
out
great
there,
idea.
and it's a great idea. But the problem is, you have all of these fragmented
I
companies.
know.
that have
Everybody has to be in.
licenses and agreements with only the select few. And what you're talking
Always
about
the way.
is BitTorrent. Everybody's in.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know where the answer lies.
No, of course we
I
don't,
know
but-
that it lies in our future because everybody's going to do it. Netflix
Yeah.
is too awesome, and Hulu is too awesome. We don't have it in Canada.
yeah.
ABC offering their shows on demand on their channel is too awesome. And again, those things have turned me into a watcher. I'm not a TV watcher. I
Yeah.
don't watch on your timetable.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make time Wednesday at 9 to
No,
watch your
it's true.
show. But if your show is there when I'm riding the exercise bike, guess
Yeah.
what? I'm going to watch Parks and Rec.
Well, let's
Yeah.
look at Top Gear, the most widely watched show on the planet. It only airs on it airs on BBC, and then a year later it airs on BBC Canada or whatever it happens to be.
It's all over
But
Netflix.
there's how many people? Well, now it's on Netflix, yeah, and it's just this amazing. It's amazing how before even it got distributed internationally, how many people were watching it
was
because they were just
torrented.
downloading onto BitTorrent.
Yeah.
And of course, it's funded via the BBC, so they don't. I mean, the guys on the BBC make fun of it on the show themselves. Like, we'll see you on BitTorrent. in an
Oh,
hour.
do they?
Oh yeah, they totally know because of the BBC funding model, which is
the
hurting
model I'm
them now.
talking about.
Yeah.
The TV tax is a very good idea.
Yeah.
No country
Well-
has better TV than the English.
Except the downside of that is due to the economic downturn is like the most popular show on the BBC. Their season lengths went from 13 episodes to 6
Really?
because they only get a they don't get
piece of the pie.
They're not based on viewers. It's not
Right.
merit based. That's
Right.
where it breaks down. Again, that's a
Yeah.
unique to BBC
Yeah,
problem,
yeah.
but
And that's where the conflict will be in this
Listen.
kind of system. Is how to negotiate the pay structure.
It's
and the
easy to poke
percentages.
holes in the systems I'm
No,
saying.
no.
I'm just throwing out
I'm not.
what I'm
I'm not
wishing.
attacking. I think it's great.
No, I know you're not attacking, but I can poke my own holes
Yeah.
in my own thing that I
Anyway,
want.
but that's the dream, and I guess how do we let the powers that be know this?
They have to know.
Well, we got to write blogs.
Listen. Wow.
We all have to just
afraid to
write
say something
blogs.
else.
that's the sound of my mind shattering. To a
I'm
million
afraid
pieces.
to say another word. Here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Somebody sitting at Warner Brothers right now or Elektra Records, whatever, they can go to Pirate Bay just like anybody else, and they can see what all the torrents are, and they know what's happening.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
Nobody doesn't know what we're talking about.
that's right.
It's just you try to be an ethical person. You try to reward the companies or the artists or whatever in a way that's fair. You want to compensate. I mean, we're all creators.
well,
we want to be compensated.
Absolutely,
Too.
and that's the flip side of it.
And that's why we charge for this podcast. Thank you
That's
for
right.
paying the
Thank you.
$17 per month.
for the using the donate button on our website.
We'll
We
fly
really
away in our
appreciate
golden
it.
helicopter after the show ends.
Yeah. And you'd think that gold would be so heavy that it wouldn't fly, but somehow the Bernoulli effect works. Next podcast, we'll talk about the Bernoulli effect.
Sounds very
And
interesting.
Olber's paradox.
Well, I think we had some interesting dialogue here
Do you
about
think?
some interesting ideas.
I don't think we've said anything that other people aren't
Oh, of
already
course not,
thinking
but
and are
that's the
frustrated
beauty
about.
of this kind of medium.
It's reiteration.
It's really reiteration, and it makes someone who is sitting in their cave somewhere go, "Wait a minute, I'm not alone."
You know
Are
what?
you talking about Osama bin Laden?
He may be watching.
He's got a real
And
passion for
Osama,
dialysis
dude.
and terrorism.
Just give yourself up.
When anyone says someone in a cave, that's my first thought. It's not Fred Flintstone. It's not Neanderthal man.
No.
It's
Osama.
Osama bin Laden.
I just like to say,
I'm sorry about that, everybody.
I'm going to keep this. I'm going to go back to an old podcasting trope, as we'd like to hear your comments about what
Sure.
your. I want to know who's got the coolest hobby, or the
Well,
coolest
I do.
passion.
I do.
Second coolest.
Yeah, you want to know about second coolest.
And
I want to know if people are collecting like Cabbage Patch Kids or something, or
Cabbage
and if
Patch.
so, we'd love to have you on the show or
The Hustler's
send-
very keen on Skyping people in.
have the group
he
Skype
really
rocking.
wants to Skype people
I
in.
want group Skype.
if you're really
Rock
interested
it.
in collecting memorial plates or those little spoons, I would really prefer if you didn't Skype in ever.
Yeah.
That's not very nice.
Hey.
That's a whole sector of our audience. who just
But anyway,
I've angered the collectibles crowd.
all 19 of them.
Yeah.
well, I've
Go ahead,
enjoyed this.
Russell.
I've enjoyed this dialogue. I've enjoyed this conversation. I should say you
Yeah,
can
you really have.
reach the Lab Coat guy at on Twitter
At the Lab Coat Guy.
and Anthony.
ADUB Tech, ADUBTECH.
And you can get me at Hustle Talk, or you can get us all at Faux Pop TV. And keep blogging, everybody.
Get your blog.
Start blogging, everybody.
Start
Yeah.
blogging, everybody.
Or not. It's your decision. Hogan's Heroes. Hogan. Oh, I love that show when I was a kid. Never have the Nazis been so jolly and fun. Isn't it insane that they made the Nazis fun and goofy?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Buddy.
That's an order.
I can't, Herr Commandant. I lost my rifle.
No, he didn't, guys. He just put it behind that cupboard.
That's hilarious.
What a liar,
Oh.
Schultz.
He's a rascal.
Like an eagle, just like an eagle. Nothing gets
I love coming home from school watching this at
Who
4
did
o'clock,
it?
4:30.
Look at Bob Crane. When I was a kid, I wanted to be Bob Crane. And then I found out how he died.
Any
Yeah.
prisoner here in this room.
We know that, Schultz, and we respect you for it.
I was like, hey, that's the guy from Family Feud.
Oh, is that what you used to say?
Or when I watched Family Feud, which was never, but yeah. Actually,
that's-
the Running Man, because he was on the Running Man later.
Fresh.
Bob Crane makes one heck of a woman, doesn't he?
Yeah.
What a show.
Well, I think nostalgia is a pretty big thing. And a
It's
lot of
powerful.
blogs are just that, right? And that's why we like them.
May I be of assistance, Herr General?
Anyway, this is FauxTech episode 4.
Herr General, I have not even greeted you yet.
Catch you later.
We're out of here.
Will you never learn?
Peace.
Wow. Man, I can't believe you pulled that up.